We're finally back in the garden this week, and I have to admit, I've been feeling a bit frustrated with my garden lately. I feel like the change in the season creates a limbo state in the garden where everything's just dying off, but new season crops haven't quite bloomed yet. So the garden is just feeling a bit bare. And I'm mostly feeling frustrated at myself for not being more organized and having plants ready for the start of the new season. But I think everything is a lesson, and every season I learn more and more and create new and better habits. Like I'm finally getting more organized and productive with my seed starting, and some of these seedlings will soon be luscious, bountiful plants in my garden, but alas, it just takes planning and patience. So this week is a bit of a garden reset as I start to say goodbye to my last season crops and start to plant out more produce for the coming season. It's currently autumn in Australia, but the summer heat is still lingering and it's been pretty brutal, but I'm definitely looking forward to some cooler weather when it does eventually get here. One of my current garden priorities is improving the soil in a few of my garden beds, which I admit is an ongoing job, but the garden beds on my archway are doing some weird things. I've noticed that some plant leaves are curling and almost turning black. These garden beds have a lot of mulch and mushroom compost in them, and to be honest, not much else. So I thought perhaps the salt content from the mushroom compost was high, or maybe the pH levels were out, but I did a pH test and all seemed to be fine. So I'm guessing it's probably caused from some sort of nutrient deficiency. So I've been trying to add more organic matter to these beds to try and add more nutrients back into the soil. And again, this has made me feel a bit frustrated with myself because at the time when I was building these garden beds, I wanted to try and keep costs down, so I opted for aged wood mulch and mushroom compost, but now I feel like maybe that was a mistake and maybe I should have just bought in some potting mix instead. But I saw a good quote yesterday that made me feel a bit better, and that was that a good gardener isn't about having a green thumb, but being willing to experiment and fail, which I greatly agree with. I think experimenting in the garden is so fun and what truly builds knowledge and confidence as a gardener, but not all experiments are going to succeed. So for now, I'll keep experimenting, I'll keep trying new things, and I'll see what eventually solves this issue. And hopefully along the way, I'll learn a few things. But one thing I'm very guilty of is picking up new plants from various markets or nurseries, and this week I have a few cool varieties that need to be potted up. I'm a big fan of blueberries, and I spotted this peach sorbet variety, and I'm a sucker for a cool name. But this variety has leaves that go a peach, pink, orange, and emerald green color, and I've heard the blueberries can taste like peach as well, so I'm excited to try this one out. Blueberries like an acidic soil with a low pH, and there's a few ways to do this, but today I'm adding coffee grounds from my coffee machine, which helps improve the acidity in the soil, but also so does pine needles. I went and grabbed some pine needles from a nearby park and added them in as well. I also added them on top as mulch. I did this recently with my other blueberry plants when I was repotting them, and they look so happy now, so I'm hoping this blueberry will love it too. I have been thinking of becoming a collector of blueberries. I already own 5 different varieties, but it would be cool to own more varieties, and some grow and cross-pollinate well with other certain varieties, so perhaps that's something I will dabble in because it'd be really nice to have a consistent crop of blueberries throughout the year. I also purchased some edible ginger. This one even has a flower on it. This is my first time growing ginger, and I'll be growing this one in a pot. Ginger likes a sandy loam soil, so luckily I have a bunch of sand left from when I did the sandbags from the cyclone the other week. So I mixed up some of that sand and the soil. And ginger also likes a slightly acidic soil as well. So again, I added in some coffee grounds and some pine needles. I've also been researching a ginger bug fermentation, which I'm still learning about. It's basically a natural soda. So I'm really hoping to use some of this ginger to give that a go eventually. I also potted up some sweet potatoes. This is a white variety, which looks interesting. I grow these in grow bags for easy harvesting, and again, these like a sandy soil. One of the most exciting plants I picked up recently is a kiwi berry. This is also known as hardy kiwi, and this is a berry plant from Japan, and the small fruit tastes just like kiwi fruit. Usually if you grow kiwi fruit, you need to have several female plants and at least one male, which I don't really have the room for. So this kiwi berry is self-fertile, and it also likes a shady spot. So I'm really excited to see how this goes and also what it tastes like. I also got my hands on a very exciting tomato plant. When I visited a lovely home nursery called Fruit Tree Cottage on the Sunshine Coast, they were giving away some Gros Lease tomato plants, which originally came from Germany and came over to Australia with the early settlers. And what's special about this particular tomato plant is that it has been grown on the same local property for the last few decades. So it's like a super heirloom. And this nursery has been helping to try preserve the seed line by saving the seeds and giving them away. And this is great because heirloom varieties are well adapted to your climate. So the longer they've been grown in the region, the more hardy they are going to be. So I'll definitely be saving the seeds on these and sharing them around to help continue the seed line. My goal is to dedicate this whole side of the garden bed to tomatoes, and I wanted to experiment with direct sowing some tomato seeds. I had already sowed some of my tomato seeds in trays, but I wanted to see how they compared to direct sowing them in the ground. So I've added a section of my garden bed entirely dedicated to the direct sow seeds. I've been topping them up with vermiculite, mostly so I remember where I planted them, but I've also been trying to get better at labeling things as well. While this garden bed is looking quite productive, the other garden beds are a different story. My last attempt at corn is slowly popping up, but the rest of the capsicum and eggplant in this bed aren't doing too well. I think it's just the end of the season, and I think in reflection, I planted them all a bit too close, so I'll definitely try and avoid that next season. So what I did is I chopped and dropped the rest of these plants to add the organic matter back into the soils, so then I'll have space to plant out some garlic, which I'm very excited about. I think one of the most challenging things lately has been the weather. It's either ridiculously hot and humid or non-stop rain, which not only makes it hard to garden, but also makes it very challenging to film these videos. I feel like I'm in a constant race against time to beat either the sun or the rain. But I was determined to get my garlic in the ground before the rain really set in. The previous day, I finished adding some compost and mulch to the garden bed, and it was now time to add the garlic. This is my second time growing garlic, and the first time didn't do too great. But I've learned since then that only certain varieties do well in this climate. Usually hardneck varieties do the best, and this is an Italian purple type. I've also learned that they don't like competition, which was the main mistake I made last time. I broke apart the individual cloves and made holes for them in the soil and planted them with the pointy ends upright. I purchased 2 bowls of these, which in hindsight was maybe a bit too much. I don't quite have the room for it currently, but I did manage to make some room in my second bed and pop them in and wish them luck. I'm still playing a bit of catch up from when we had the cyclone. My lovely trellises have been in storage, but I finally got them out in preparation for some new plants. The old dry beans were still attached, so first I had to remove them. I'm currently direct sowing some sweet pea seeds for them, and these have an absolutely stunning flower that I'm very excited for. I already have some sprouting on my archway, but I'm hoping my garden can be covered in them. And the last little job in my garden is planting out some beetroot. I've never grown beetroot before, but I do know they like to be direct sowed. And of course, I didn't really have room for these, so I cut back some last season plants to make room. This zucchini hasn't been doing much, so sadly, it gets the chop. But that pretty much sums up my week in the garden. I know I can feel disheartened when the garden isn't lush and productive, but I'm trying to practice kindness and patience with myself. I'm excited for all my upcoming plants and produce and can't wait to see them flourish in the garden. And if you want to stay up to date, I do have a free Patreon where I post weekly blogs as well. I also run another YouTube channel as well, so that's where a lot of my time goes, but I'm trying my best to put out weekly videos, but I'm really enjoying making them, so I appreciate you watching and I'll see you next time.